G'day. I know, second video, and yes, I was going to wait until probably in the next couple of days, but I sort of had another idea. Most of you by now have seen my shorts, which show the native Australian bush in the Mallee region of South Australia. Kangaroos, sheep, the trees, the different times of the day, the sunsets, the cloud formations at night, the stars, and all those sort of things. But where I am today is very different to where I started. So today I'm actually going to, or in this video, I'm actually going to talk about camping itself, not what you do when you're out there, not what you see, because all of that comes as part of the gear that you actually take out there to sleep in, to cook with, and to be as comfortable as you possibly can, no matter the weather, whether it's stinking hot or whether it's, raining as it was last night. So back when I first started, obviously went out with my parents, and generally used whatever they had. But eventually I started going out on my own, and that was through a multiple range of reasons that I won't go into right now. So I started basically with the basics. A camp chair, a table, foldable table, something that I could fold up and put in the boot of the car. And bearing in mind, I was only really driving in a Nissan Pulsar, which for those Americans, I know you're not going to know what a Nissan Pulsar is, but if you can imagine a Toyota Corolla sedan, so 4 doors, a boot or a trunk, just nothing overly big. But it was fine for what I needed it for. I could get to work, I could do other things that I did when I was at that age around the city. But I could also pack it up and go away for a few days or a week or 2 weeks, whatever it was. So yeah, I had an esky or an icebox. I had, and that was generally filled with ice, and I stored my drinks, my food, anything that needed to remain cold. I had a little blue A-frame tent, so basically just like that. Something which I was way taller than when I was standing next to it, probably only came up to about my hip, and I'm around about 5'11" tall, so you can see how small it was. It was great. Air mattress, sleeping bag, pillow, the usuals, cutlery, cups, plates, a pan to cook on, a pot to boil my water in, just very, very domesticated sort of gear that you would take out to go camping with. A tarp, just in case it got wet, poles, ropes, things like that, just very basic sort of gear. And then obviously camera, clothes. I always used to take a little bag out there with socks, jocks, shirts, etc., etc. A little bowl to do my dishes in, and that was pretty much about it. And I would be out there for 2 weeks without any problems at all, maybe a week. But as I got older, things changed. I actually didn't know sometimes what the weather was going to be like. So sometimes I'd be out there and I'd be sitting in the tent, this little blue A-frame tent, or sitting in the car while the rain would come through, and it would just get hot and condensation, and I'd have to be turning on the windscreen wipers all the time. It was just annoying. So it was time to change. So eventually I got a tent, what they call a dome tent. Comes with a series of poles, doesn't need a lot of pegging down, but it was tall enough that I could sort of at least vaguely stand up in, but I could certainly put a chair inside. And it even had a little veranda that sort of came out the front, that if it got really wet, and that veranda could be zippered up, so you virtually had two sort of areas, one of which was your storage area, one of which was your sleeping area. So if it got wet or rainy, then basically you could at least go inside the tent, and it was far more comfortable. In terms of lighting, I used to have a gas lantern. Came with a little gas canister that would sit underneath the lamp, and then you'd light it. And that was brilliant because it actually threw out quite a bit of heat as well. So if it was cold and it was wet, then at least I was remaining warm, because it's not like you can stand the tent next to the fire, because then it becomes a fire risk, and you do have to be careful with things like that. So that worked. That solved the issue. I still had the 2-burner Coleman stove, and I ended up having that little stove for probably the better part of 25 years. It was just a brilliant stove. It ran on a little 4-kilo gas bottle or propane bottle. Had 2 burners on it, and the gas would last for months without having to refill it. Torches, basically ended up having a battery torch. The problem was that, every time I'd go out there, I'd have to make sure I had a new battery, or at least a spare battery. And they were pretty chunky batteries. The torch was called a Dolphin torch. And Australians will know what that is. I'm not going to try and explain it to an American, because it's too complicated, and my Dolphin torch died years ago, and I certainly don't have it anymore, so I couldn't even show you. But if you look it up, you'll find it. And it was a great torch. It had a good spot on it. But, like I say, the battery changes were just sort of starting to get annoying, and I really didn't feel like changing. I'd go out there for a week, use the torch, come back home, put the torch in storage. 12 months later, the battery's dead. Got to get a new battery. So a battery lasting for all of 5 nights was not really the way I wanted to go. So eventually, about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided to get a trailer. Now, I'd stayed in camper trailers. I'd stayed in them during the summer and also during the winter. And they are, look, I know a lot of people love them, but I'm not one of them. I froze like nobody's business in the winter, and it was so hot sitting inside it during the summer that I wasn't going to have a bar of it. I'm sure there's ways that you can cool them down or heat them up, but honestly, when you don't have a lot of power out there, wasting money on things like that is just crazy. So camper trailer wasn't really what I wanted. Some people suggested a rooftop tent, but again, I'm getting older, so as much as I don't get up and go to the toilet in the middle of the night, having a tent sort of perched 5-6 foot up in the air on top of the roof of the car is great when you're in your 20s and 30s, not so much when you're in your 50s. Getting up and climbing down a damn ladder is just not really what I wanted. So the trailer that I wanted was what they call a box trailer. So it's based on a 6x4 trailer, 6 foot by 4 foot, and it's got a box on it, effectively. So when I bought the trailer, I knew what I wanted to do with it. I wanted water out there. So I grabbed a caravan tank storage thing that they stick underneath the caravans, and that's where they store the water. So I built that into the trailer, along with a pipe that comes out, and I can actually get water from that tank, and I can actually refill it as well. So So I drilled into the side of the trailer and put a refilling nozzle so that when I actually run out of water, I can actually refill it. I also put in a storage area for food. And yes, initially when the trailer first started living out there, I had an issue with the field mice who would get in there. I don't know how they got in there, but they did, and started nibbling on the pasta. So immediately I grabbed some Tupperware containers and basically replaced the pasta, and haven't had a problem since. No mice, no nothing. Put down a few baits, which I really didn't want to do, but I did it anyway. And that sorted out the mice issue, and I've never had a problem in probably the 3 years that it's been out there. And I bought another tent. The tent, I did do a lot of research, but I pretty much knew what I wanted right from the very start. The one I wanted was an Oz tent. They come in various sizes. There's an RV3, RV4 and RV5. The RV5 is basically for a 5-person, RV4 for 4 people, RV3 for 3. Simple. We call it the 30-second tent because basically once you've actually pulled it out of the box, it takes 30 seconds to set it up, and that's it. I mean, yeah, it does take a little bit longer by the time you peg it down, but the pegs it comes with are, they're tiny. So the pegs I ended up getting were actually garden stakes. I went to a hardware store, and because I knew with sand, any bit of wind, the pegs that any tent comes with are just useless. They really are. I don't know, it's obviously they've got to supply pegs, but most people end up just going out and getting their own. Now I could have gone to Big W or Kmart or Target and just grabbed the biggest, what they call sand pegs, but I know from experience they don't work either. They move around too much. They don't really grip anything. A few people suggested screw pegs, but again, not deep enough. So in the end, I grabbed garden stakes, and they're basically a metal pole with a little ball on top, and they go down. They're about 750 mil long. They're just under a metre, and you can push them in probably half a metre, and then just hammer them down the rest of the way, and they don't move. So I've never had a problem with them. They've gone through some pretty extreme weather, and they're just brilliant for where I am. They didn't cost much. They cost probably less than a packet of pegs, and I've probably got about 30 or 40 of them out there. I've got spares just in case. I always like to have spares, and they're just fantastic. So the tent, the RV3 is what I ended up getting. I probably should have gotten the RV4 just for that bit of extra room, but RV3 is fine. I've just got a single stretcher bed in there because it was going to be set up as a more permanent, semi-permanent campsite. And I didn't want an air mattress. I don't care. I've been through more air mattresses in my life than I can poke a stick at, and every single one of them, and I don't care how much you pay for them, they always go down on either the first or the second night. For some reason, they will not stay up. So that was never an option. So I got a single bed, stretcher bed, and put some gear underneath the bed because there is storage space underneath there. And then put a whole pile of blankets along with a couple of yoga mats on top to actually give me some comfort. And then, of course, the sleeping bag that I've got, and I've been through a lot of sleeping bags, but the one I've got currently is rated for about -10. So by the time I get in there, and within half an hour, I'm as warm as toast, seriously. And then just your pillow, and the pillow stays out there. Every now and again, I'll put a bit of lavender on it, but it's fine. No water gets in there, And so the initial idea was to put an awning similar to what you've seen on the side of my car and stretch that from the trailer to the tent. Well, that lasted for around about 7 months and then died catastrophically. Luckily, nothing got wet because the tent is sealed, the trailer's sealed, but with around about 10 litres of water sitting on top of the canopy, it was, the awning rod's bent, the poles were just messed up. I had no choice. It had to go. So then I had to think of another way of actually covering the gap between the trailer and the tent. So it came down to a 3 metre by 3 metre or 10 foot by 10 foot awning, or canopy. So these are things that you often see on beaches where people put them up. They've got a triangular roof above them, 4 legs, and they go up in next to no time. But I wanted the more heavy duty one, so not just one that you stick on the ground and it blows away the first moment you use it. This one is actually pretty solid. And then I use star droppers in each corner, so all 4 corners, tied it to the star droppers, and then basically ratchet strapped the whole lot. So the canopy actually extends over the top of the trailer, part of it, because the trailer actually has 2 solar panels on it, which are connected to 2 deep cell batteries, and that provides all the power I need. It can run an 80 litre fridge, it can run my little Bluetooth speaker, I can charge my phone, charge my torches, and just to give you an idea, this is one of my torches. So it's an Nebo. It just runs on a USB, and it has various settings. So you can either get a very wide beam, or if you actually unscrew it, you get a very sharp beam. And then this little thing here, which twists, has a strobe light. Then there's a low power, medium power, and high power. And that will see around about 250 metres, 250 plus metres, without any problems out there. But generally I'll just have it on the low, and that's enough to basically run around camp with, to see where the wood pile is, to fill up the campfire, etc. And then I've got, oh yeah, it's right behind the phone. Then I've got another torch. This one is also a Nebo, and again, it has that very, very sort of sharp beam. It's got a very, very wide beam, but the benefit with this is that I can actually open it up like that. So just pull this section that way, and it will actually light up the entire inside of the tent before I go to bed. So I'll keep this open when I'm climbing into bed, and then all I have to do is simply push it closed and it goes off. And again, that's just charged by USB, and basically this torch will generally last around about a week to 2 weeks out there, because I'm not really using it. The one I use most is this one here, and the reason I use this one is because it fits easily into my pocket. I know the shape of it off by heart. I know where everything is, even in pitch black. This torch, and it's also very it's solid. I mean, it really is solid. I won't hit the table with it because the table's glass. So, but it's an incredibly solid little torch. The benefit I like about this is that you can recharge it, and it's actually hidden completely. That is actually watertight. So that section there. Not a cheap torch, probably about 150 bucks. But again, weeks worth of charge without any problems at all. I can charge it on the batteries in the trailer. I don't have to carry around a put load of batteries for it because it only has one. And yes, I do have a spare one that will fit this torch if this one ever dies. But I've had this torch for around about 4, 5, 6 years now, and it is honestly never let me down. This will break your toe if you drop it on your exposed toe. I mean, it's a weighty torch, and it's a solid torch, so it's worth its money. And that's really what I've learnt since I've been going out there, is I don't need things that are going to break down in 5 seconds. I need them to last. I need them to be able to put up with sand. I need them to be able to put up with water. You know, what happens if I keep dropping? I mean, I've dropped the damn thing, I don't know how many times, into the sand, and it still works perfectly well. You know, and it's like all the gear that I've got, it's been, if something doesn't work, it goes in the bin as soon as I get home, and I replace it with something that actually does work. And if it means spending a little bit more on it, so be it. Because I do go out there a lot, and I need my stuff to work. I just don't need to think about it. I just pick it up and use it, and then put it down when I'm finished with it. And it's the same with the stove. Although the stove died, I was sitting there one morning cooking breakfast, and next thing there was just a burst of sound. And the pipe leading from the gas bottle to the actual stove had decided enough was enough, and it finally cracked. And unfortunately, due to the age of the stove, I couldn't get a replacement. I mean, I was lucky I didn't burn down the whole campsite, but by the same token, I've got 2 fire extinguishers out there. So fires aren't really a problem. So the first thing I did was turn the gas off, and hey presto, the fire went away. And luckily I hadn't burnt anything at all, but it meant that the stove had finally come to the end of its usage after nearly 25 years, probably longer. And so the first thing I did was, when I went home that day, stopped in the hardware store, bought another 2-burner stove, and that thing's running fine. And the other thing I did was bought a spare pipe, spare hose for it. So if I ever have that same problem again and I'm out bush, then I've already got a hose that I can just quickly switch over, and then I'm good to go again. I do keep gas out there, just spare bottles, but you know, a 4-kilo gas bottle, I haven't filled that up for probably 12 months. Oh, actually 6 months, I reckon. And it's not even halfway through, and I'm out there a lot, as you can see. So yeah, the one thing I can sort of, camping for everyone is completely different. You know, it could mean just going away for the occasional weekend, and honestly, a Kmart tent will do the trick. But, you know, because most people who do just a weekend trip are generally looking at the weather. I mean, if it's nice weather, they'll go out there. If it's not, they won't. So they're not looking at doing the things that I do. But once you sort of get through those little stages, you'll find, probably no different to me, that I've spent more money on camping gear than I can poke a stick at. And I've reached the point now where all my gear, including whether I'm wet, dry or indifferent, is going to be working exactly the way I want it to. So the trailer's done its job. The trailer's got food, it's got water, it's got a fridge, it's got power, it's got all the gear that I need, and more. It's got spare blankets, spare sleeping bags, you know, just things that can just make your life really annoying when you're out there, and then all of a sudden goes wrong and you got nothing to replace it. Well, that's not the case with me. I have things to replace, and like a lot of people have said, you know, 2 is 1, 1 is none. What does that mean? Well, when the pipe burst, I was without a gas burner. Simple. So went out, bought another gas burner. But I didn't just buy a gas burner, I bought that little stove as well. So now I've got 2 ways of cooking, and I got the extra pipe. So that's 3. So if the pipe goes again, straight away I can put a new pipe on it and I'm good to go. If the second pipe goes, then basically, you know, I've got the camp stove and I can still cook and I can still boil water. That's what they mean by one is none, two is one. So if something goes wrong, always have a spare on hand. It's why I carry fuses for the fridges. And yes, I've got an Engel 60-litre fridge freezer in the back of the car. And I've also got an 80-litre fridge freezer in the trailer that I don't turn on, but that can run on the car, on the batteries and the solar panels, and I've tested that before, and it's been fine. I've had more than enough power out there without any issues at all. Camp lights, etc., etc. The camp light I use, again, comes from King's. It's just a roll-out LED strip light. And that lights up camp like nobody's business. It's fantastic. I can read a book. I can do everything, cook, what have you. And it just rolls back up. But at the moment, it's just out permanently. And I do have a spare out there just in case that goes as well. So everything I've got spares of. I've got tarps out there. I've got all sorts of things. So, but it is what it is when you start setting up a semi-permanent campsite. It's not permanent. I could have it all cleaned up, packed up, and no one would ever know I was there probably within a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and it would all be gone. Hope that never happens, but it isn't my property, so that threat is always there. So, and no, it is not my property. I'm exceedingly privileged to be allowed out there because I don't bug the sheep too much. I treat it like it's my home. I treat it with the dignity and respect that it deserves. And that's taken a lot of years of proving myself to be able to get to that point. And I thank the property owner just exponentially because it means the world to me. I love it out there. Absolutely adore it. I love seeing the seasons go by. I love watching the animals feed. I love hearing the birds. I love that little flower, growing in a field of just on its own. There wasn't another one of those flowers that I could see. And yet there it was, surviving, struggling, but surviving. And it's just silly little things like this morning. I really probably should have done a short, but the trees up behind me, because of the rain last night, there was actually steam coming off the bark as the water actually evaporated. As the sun actually hit the trees, the trees started to steam up. And you could actually see it in the sunshine. And, the ants were crawling along the trees. The little bugs were in there just absolutely having a ball. And it's silly little things like that I see that most people will never see in a lifetime. And I've seen an awful lot. So camping is absolutely worth it. It is what you make of it, very much so. It is not being a home. Home is always far more comfortable than being out there ever will be. But once you've got your setup right, and once you're comfortable with the way things work, and once you go out there without worrying about anything, because you know that everything works, it becomes a far more enjoyable experience. You see things. You start, instead of worrying, did I bring a torch battery? You start looking at those little flowers that are growing on a hill. You start watching the animal life, and all of a sudden, all the worries that you left behind are just gone because nothing out there cares about what you went through with your work the previous week. It just doesn't. But you've got to get out and actually experience it sometimes. And that's what camping's all about. It's about sitting around that campfire at night with a full belly after a decent meal, just watching the stars and the meteors and the satellites and just absolutely letting your mind wander. because you're just in awe of what you're seeing. It's fantastic, and I highly recommend it to everyone. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.